Welcome to Session 7 of European Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Stanford Engineering. Today we're very pleased to be presenting Flanders and Sweden and our Belgian Flemish partner this year, iMinds, who is the official sponsor of this session. So our speakers today are Lieven Vermaele. Apologies if I'm not getting the Flemish exactly right. CEO and co-founder of SDNsquare, a very interesting software-defined networking company. Wim de Waele, who's CEO of iMinds, our official partner, the Flemish ICT Institute based in Gent. And Martin Hauge, who is general partner and co-founding partner at Creandum Ventures in Stockholm. So today we're going to be covering Belgium, Flanders region, Flemish region, and Sweden. So Wim, welcome to Stanford.
Thank you.
You just flew in today from Europe, is that correct?
Yeah, through LA, but
through LA. So tell us about what's happening on the Flemish innovation and startup scene. Thank you.
Thank you for positioning us already from a geographical point of view, so I don't have to do that anymore. As you didn't see the size of Flanders on that map. It could have been huge, just like the States are very small. It's actually very small, as you probably guessed. That's about 6 million population. And Brussels is actually much better known, the capital of Belgium, than Flanders as a region. It's actually the Dutch-speaking part of the country, right? Now, I'm not going to give you a geography lesson. I'm going to talk about what we're trying to do to stimulate European entrepreneurship. I only got 7 minutes, so it'll be very quick. I prefer to give the time to a startup that's part of our ecosystem, because that'll give you a much better feel for what we're doing and what technology is actually emerging from those regions. Now, there's Flanders again. These are the startups. We're basically in the business of doing research, transferring that research to the market through incubation and early stage seed funding. That's what iMinds is all about. And when I joined it, which is 9 years ago now, I actually worked in the software sector before. And having worked there for 20 years in software business, both in Belgium and Europe in general, and the United States, I never got in touch with government. I had no idea why I would ever talk to government, why they should play a role in actually nurturing technology companies. And I had never been in touch. Didn't ask for subsidies, didn't ask for tax breaks, didn't ask for any government intervention. And I remember a startup entrepreneur, when we were in a discussion with the European Commission, and one of those European Commission guys asked the startup, the entrepreneur, well, what should we do as the European Commission to stimulate European entrepreneurship? And he said, get out of the way, right? Now, getting out of the way is essentially it's a somewhat rough description, but essentially it means, create the right kind of environment, the right kind of regulations and freedom for people to be able to have the same kind of entrepreneurial success that you can, for example, have here in Silicon Valley. Not reproduce Silicon Valley, but create the culture like there is one here. And I'm not pessimistic about that. I think the beginnings of such a culture have taken root. There are a lot of obstacles. It's not easy. Europe is a complicated continent. You have all those different countries with all their different also geopolitical issues. But nevertheless, you see that spirit really emerging. And the government should try to create or stimulate that environment, because that's where economic growth also in Europe will come from. Now, governments have been trying to do that for many decades, and they've also been hugely unsuccessful in a lot of cases. And actually, I would recommend this dream. It's not a Stanford professor. A learner is from Harvard. But the Boulevard of Broken Dreams is a very accurate description of what governments should and should not do in this context. Yeah. I'm not going to go into detail on that, but I would like to say it's a strong source of inspiration for what we're doing. And we've been around now for 9 years. We were founded by the government, but a lot of our funding now also comes from the private sector. And we've been consistently putting money into research, applied research, incubation, and seed funding, with a growth to almost 50 million euro by 2013. The way we do that is by focusing on the whole picture, not just like Seed Camp or Y Combinator like seed funding for startups, but also technology research, applied testing of that research, and we have a whole plethora of instruments that allow companies that work with us to take their technology to the market. But what I would specifically want to focus on here is our program to create startups. Now, we are a small country, a small region, and as such, the numbers are, of course, I heard there are 28,000 startups in San Francisco or in Silicon Valley. Forgive me if I got the numbers wrong. We're not talking anywhere in that magnitude, but we got hundreds. Yeah, hundreds, and we're trying to get to a certain critical mass, which is absolutely necessary for any cluster that wants to really make a difference. We also try to specialize in certain particular fields of software, but that would lead me too far. And you see the example of a company that'll tell you more than me giving generic descriptions. Now, the clue, of course, in building those ecosystems is not just doing good research, incubating companies, give them $50,000. It's also to have the follow-up financing. That's the strength of the venture capital-driven economy that has also been created here. If we don't do that in the European context, and I'm glad there's a VC here talking later, then all the research is wasted, basically. That's why we are really focusing also on building those relationships with the venture capital community, both in Europe, but also in the United States. And one of the reasons I'm here this week is to talk here, but also to establish those relationships with the VC community here. Because a lot of software companies that start in Europe, as was mentioned, have a good, in a lot of cases, it makes perfect business sense to at least transfer the sales and marketing function to the United States, or at least part of their operations, and have a strong presence here from the start, even if they're very small. So our relationship building with the US VC community is also very good. And we're seeing successful follow-up funding now for the startups that we're generating. Now, I'm not going to go into detail. The priorities that we have in venturing are already mentioned in international investors, but also smart money. And smart money, we mean that business angels play an important role in the development of our ecosystem. The government can give money, but it cannot give market know-how. It cannot give entrance to particular markets. It doesn't have any know-how that can be useful for young startups. So we need to rely on other means to provide support, like you have the networks here, the informal networks of business angels, professionals, etc. So one of the latest initiatives we've taken in that respect is an early stage fund, which is actually what is called and I think it's a very interesting evolution in the venture capital community, a mirror fund. We basically brought together a number of business angels, both in the United States and in Europe, in Belgium, in an angel club. And there is a fund that, together with those angels, invests in the startups. We believe that that provides the necessary expertise, but also the money in that early stage to help those companies go global, because that's the end game. Yeah? I worked in my personal experience when I started this organization was, a lot of European startups, they are what is called in Belgium at least, they stay under their church tower, right? We are a Catholic country of origin, so we have churches, and they stay there. They look at their own market, their small market. There's the potential. The potential for software companies around the world right now is global, and sometimes I run into people from the government who say, why do you help companies move to the United States or part of their operations to the United States? Why do you help them go global? I believe that you cannot. We live in a borderless world, at least from a software perspective. And companies like SDNsquare or others, the entrepreneurs need to decide where their market is, where their operation should be. As a country, you need to generate, or as a government, you need to generate the right environment so that they choose to come to you, or at least keep part of their value add in your region. But you cannot force them to do that. So our Go Global program, which helps companies go west, come here, from our perspective, go west, yeah, from the European perspective, also go into the Asian market, is, let's say, the last pillar of our approach to helping build that ecosystem. And 9 years down the line, I came out of software industry, I came out of startups. What I do see emerging is there are a number of interesting companies that are now emerging from our ecosystem. It takes a while. It's not something that you build overnight in 2 years. It takes a while to build up that kind of environment, but once it's there, it has a certain dynamic that will create the entrepreneurs of the future. People, serial entrepreneurs, people who will put money in them, and international networks. And I'm glad to be here in Stanford talking to, I would guess, a number of potential entrepreneurs and a number of existing ones, because I recognize some in the audience. We are keen on establishing our network here and bringing our companies here, so I'm very glad to be introducing as one of the companies SDNsquare, who's got not only a very interesting technology, but also the right management team to take it to the market. And Lieven, our CEO, will be there to illustrate that. Thank you very much.
We'll do a couple questions. So, Wim, you showed us a very impressive number of companies coming out of iMinds since 2007, 2008. What types are these mostly? So what percentage would be consumer versus enterprise? So what are the types of software or other companies?
Well, our portfolio is primarily business to business, enterprise oriented, because if you look at the B2C market, we have a small home market. It's hard to start a B2C company in our market. You're better off, to be frank, to do it here, or at least in one of the larger markets. And we also have a culture of B2B. Typically, Belgium has been like a big supplier, or it's been very dependent on the German economy as well. The German economy is a big driver of our economy, and a lot of companies are suppliers to German companies. So you see a lot of that culture in Belgium, and it also reflects on the software industry that is primarily B2B.
Now, this is a point of interesting contrast. So Denmark, along with Flanders, have a track record of doing numerous enterprise software B2B companies. Berlin, however, tends to be better known for B2C companies. This is where most of the copycats take place. We have time for one question. Yes?
I live in Stockholm, actually.
Oh, really? I know it. I'm sorry.
So I had a question. Given the difficult time that Belgium is passing from a political situation, especially in Flanders with the Creandum movement pushing the separatism, I was asking myself, what are you trying to do to export your model also to the independent region of Brussels and to Catalonia in order to create more and more country also, which I think would be good for the rest of Europe?
Yeah. Well, I try to stay out of the geopolitical discussions, both within our country. People are wondering what we're talking about. We have two regions, a Flemish and a French-speaking, with quite different cultures also, and not in the internet community, but in general speaking. And there is a drive within the country to kind of create more autonomous regions. It sounds ridiculous, I would guess, from a US perspective, but it's really alive politically. What I try to do is scale our model and get integrated very strongly into the European initiatives. Because within Europe is a big market. If it would be integrated, it would be as big as the US, right, or even bigger. What we need to do is kind of focus on that scale. And within Belgium, I try to collaborate as much as possible with everybody, to be honest, but focusing primarily on trying to replicate the model we have at the European level with a number of selected partners. Because in certain other clusters you have similar initiatives, and especially from a follow-up funding perspective, we need to work at the European scale. Once a company gets out of the incubation phase and needs funding for a Series A, we need to look at Europe as the market. Yeah. And I'm not saying we're there yet, but that's certainly what I try to do.
Okay. Wim, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So we're very pleased to welcome our first Belgian startup here in 6 years of operation. Lieven Vermaele is CEO and founder of SDNsquare out of Gent, and also an iMinds portfolio company. Lieven, thank you very much for flying in all the way from Flanders to spend a little bit of time with us and tell us what you're doing in enterprise software area.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, everybody. So yes, my name is Lieven Vermaele. So if you want to pronounce my name, think about leaving and drop the G. That's how you pronounce it in English to do it easy. Okay, I hope the company which was here 6 years ago still exists. I don't know. At least the company you mentioned in the beginning that 6 years ago was here, that presented that it still exists, I hope.
Well, we've never presented a Belgian company
Oh,
yet.
never before.
You're our first Belgian startup.
Okay, good. So honestly, it's an honor for me to be here at Stanford, but I'm really going to give you some feedback. I know Stanford when I was young, when I was a student, as an engineering school. This is great in engineering, and we never discussed business in Belgium. We were always discussing engineering. So but at least now I'm happy to be here at Stanford, both for the engineering side, but also for the business side. Now, going back to your question about Belgium, I have a quite special career. I worked for a quite big corporation in Europe, a quite good organization in Europe, where I was active in many European countries. And when I had to do presentations about Europe, I always used a different slide. I never used a map, I never used a Google map. I used this one, which is based on Twitter and which shows the communication between people in Europe. I think that shows one of the biggest challenges we have in Europe. And I think that's what Wim also means with the integration problem we have in Europe. We are very divided. We are, in fact, we know each other, we are neighboring for each other, we love to travel to other countries, but in fact we don't talk with each other. We don't work together with each other. And also about the discussion of Flanders, what you see there above France and below the blue Netherlands, that's a little bit the line between languages in our country. To give you an idea, my previous job was in media, and I had similar discussions about regions and broadcasting stations, and bottom line, my statement was, a language defines a community. And that's the problem of Europe, our language problem, the fact that people don't speak enough an international language or the language of the others and interact and communicate with each other. Okay, my presentation today is not to go usually in depth on this one here, but in fact I want to explain what we do as a company. I have been asked also to share what kind of special techniques we have to be successful, and also why in fact, am doing this now. Why I give up that big career job to do something like a small startup company in a small country like Belgium. So the company we are called is SDNsquare. SDN, I don't know how many engineering people are there in the room, but SDN stands for software-defined networking. It's a kind of hot topic for the moment. And in fact, we found out by applying our technology that we were doing something like SDN. But we do SDN in a quite special way. We apply the principles of SDN, but we do something more. And that's the reason why we are called SDNsquare. The second line tells you guaranteed performance and predictable. Well, the industry I come from, especially media, is an industry about big files, about a lot of networks, where you have to transfer a lot of data. And what you find out when you talk about, for instance, news or things like that, you want to have the news on air directly. You want to have the files there on air directly. It's an environment where you have a lot of files going around over networks, and where you want to have that file directly on air, where you want to have all the bandwidth available to go directly on air. It's a mission-critical environment. And today we still see a lot of these companies that go digital and go IP-based, they still have a lot of performance problems in that area. And what we deliver them on normal IP stuff, hardware, is guaranteed performance, and not only guaranteed, but also in a predictable way. To use it in another context, it's like if you look to IP networks today and we drive with our cars on the highway, we have traffic jams. And we can buffer and we can, in fact, we go into a harmonic system. But that doesn't work for mission-critical environments. In some mission-critical environments, you have to have the line speed available of moving that packet or that transfer that file from one place to another. You must have that lane on the highway available, and that's what we do. That's what we do in our solution. In fact, you step in your car, you go to Stanford University, full speed, the whole line available for you. We applied the technology, that core technology we have, we applied it in 2 domains. And it always comes back to guaranteed performance. On the left side, we have our product called Warp, which you can position like a software-defined storage or data center environment, but again, with the principal element of guaranteed performance. I want to have a storage data center environment where, for instance, for that application, I want to have guaranteed so many gigabits per second. Guaranteed independent of what is happening on the rest of the storage environment. On the right side is our, let's say, our most advanced product we have, which is our Grid, which is really a network product. You can build up a network, you can program the network, and you can define guaranteed flows between sources and destinations in a network. It's like Today, when you have a network, you have connectivity. You connect to the network, you have bandwidth. But that doesn't tell you anything about how much bandwidth you're going to have. It doesn't tell anything about, are you going to have that bandwidth the whole time, independent of what is happening on the network by other people. In media, again, or in medical, I'm going to give another example, you really need to have that performance the whole time available when you want to have it. In our grid solution, you build up that network, you build up the flows, you say, this is my source, this is my destination. Between these two, I want to have guaranteed 1.2 gigabit per second. You have it, it's there, and it's there really guaranteed, independent of the other traffic and the other load on the network. And that's what we are doing on the right side. And always in combination with elements that we find important, guaranteed performance, high efficiency, and linear scalability. So the market we are in is the market of, let's say, companies that ask this kind of mission-critical behavior. And which are the media, where we come from, and where as a business our focus is today. It's our background, it's our network, and there we do our business today. But also via people we know and we work with, we know there are other domains that are quite keen on this issue of guaranteed performance in IP networks and systems. And that's the medical domain, it's the military domain, and some others are sometimes popping up that people say, well, we also would like to have that kind of guaranteed performance. So the requirement typically is guaranteed performance and also predictability. Now, there is something more around this, because we are confronted also with an environment where data is continuously growing. And I'm not meaning data like big data, but files, video files are becoming more detailed. That's happening in the medical world, that's happening in the broadcasting world. And in the same way, also we get more and more users that are using these files on the same platform. So you get more and more data growth on these platforms. And because of that, in fact, you also want to have a scalable platform. You don't want to have a platform, a network solution where, for instance, today you have to do a certain investment, and if you have to have double capacity tomorrow, that you have to do a quadruple investment. So we want to deliver a solution, and we deliver a solution which is nicely scalable and goes with what you need, and it's really cost effective. Now, and that's the only technical explanation I'm going to do, there is an issue with IP and high performance. And here I simplify the situation on 2 dimensions. On the one dimension, you have, let's say, the form factor of the data itself. You can have a lot of data, they call it big data, small packets, emails, Excel sheets that goes over a network. That's not really problematic, it works. And on the right side, you can have really bulk data, big video files, or call it the continuously video stream that is coming out of a camera at the Oscars. These today don't go over IP networks. They go over specific SDI cables, which is a kind of specific technology. And on the vertical line, I have, let's say, the time-sensitive and the time-insensitive element. Why? Because, in fact, if you have time, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all, meaning if I have time to transfer a file, and I know RTL, for instance, in Europe is doing that, I have to transfer a file to another place in the world, I can take the time. Their IP and best effort IP works. But if I really have no time, I want to be absolutely sure I'm on the right top area. There's really a critical zone for networking. Big files, delivering them in a guaranteed way. Now, if we would talk with network companies in this area, they would say we're going to over-provision. Over-provisioning means we're going to multiply the bandwidth. We're going to make more lanes, 101 multiplied by 10. And we're going to make big cross points. We're going to put buffers there where cars can park. But over-provisioning, in fact, that will work partly. It will reduce the risk, but in fact, it will never remove the risk. And that's something that the companies we are working with, they don't want. They want to have absolutely guaranteed that the packets will pass by, that there are no traffic jams anymore. So over-provisioning, on the one hand, is not solving the equation, and on the other hand, it's a very expensive solution, a very expensive installation you have to do. So coming back to my point about the Oscars, for instance, a lot of video links, for instance, today are very specific technology called SDI. In some storage platforms, you also have very specific technology as InfiniBand fiber channels. And in fact, these are all, let's say, proprietary solutions, not standard IP solutions, which have been developed to cope with these performance and reliability issues. And it's now there where we play a role. What we have developed is on standard IT equipment, standard switches, in fact, very low-end switches, with standards that exist here defined in the valid, standard IEEE standard. That combined with software intelligence, where the intelligence is taken away out of the routing and switching equipment by a kind of expert system around it. By that, we have created a solution that creates a mission-critical IP environment, that create guaranteed flows in that right top bottom. That means that with normal IP equipment that I can normally physically connect and interact with my other IP equipment in my environment, I can now create that mission critical zone in my environment. And you really have to see it as a mission critical zone. The left side and the bottom side is still your normal IP environment, your normal installation you have today. But where you have now today these kind of special implementations on the right top side, we can come with our SDNsquare solution and really build up guaranteed performance networking on the right top side. Now, I'm not going to go into technical details, but coming back to this one, you see the diagram on the left side. So that network solution, we call it grid. The diagram on the left side, in fact, visualizes links, fibers, and switches. What you see over there is a typical, let's say, for instance, data center or enterprise campus network. So the switches are the boxes. I'm going to try to use the laser here. So these are the switches, and you have the links in between the switches. And in fact, you can connect clients, meaning your laptop, a camera, a storage server on this kind of network. And then you want to have guaranteed flows. So how does it happen here in this environment? In fact, you start with your system, you start to connect the cabling, and then the first thing you have to do when you have normal network engineers is, in fact, you have to start to program all these switches. And that takes days. It takes days to program VLAN, CLI codes, and all this kind of stuff on this kind of switches. And you have to do this with a specific goal in mind. Now, in our solution, in this kind of simple user interface on the right side, we're only going to ask you 2-3 questions. What is the maximum bandwidth you want to transfer over that network from left to right? What is the maximum number of flows you want to have in your installation, guaranteed paths between sources and destinations, and how many clients and sources you want to connect? And with these three basic questions, the system will tell you how many switches you need or how big your architecture has to be. After that, in the second step, we just say implement, and all the switches are configured just in less than 30 seconds. Where today in normal networking, it would take you a week, it would take you 2 weeks. If it changes, meaning if somebody comes up and wants to install, I don't know, another system ABC, then maybe the whole networking has to be reviewed. Here you can review the networking. You can say, do I still have the capacity available or not? If yes, okay, no problem. If not, then I just add another switch, I grow my network, and I have more performance available. And that's the whole thing here I want to say here. We really have created, on the basis of software-defined networking itself, a very simple system to create a network, to define a network, to give connectivity, but also to give absolutely guaranteed data flows. And that's the second one, guaranteed networking over there. And now you come to something different in networking today. Networking today is quite, call it, boring. A network just gives you access, it gives you connectivity. But here, in fact, you can go to on-demand networking. That means I can have an installation in place, and I can say, well, this kind of server now doesn't need, let's say, the guaranteed bandwidth connection, it's just best effort connected. But when I really want to have the guaranteed bandwidth connection, then I bring him into the guaranteed bandwidth flow. I can just bring it up. So I can now play with the networking business model. I can bring a network into a company which runs like a normal IP network, but when the client needs absolutely guaranteed bandwidth or needs special functionalities, then he just calls for it, he brings up the flows, and he has it. So you can do a completely different way of networking over there. Also, the last point effect, and I'm not going to show the video here, but having these guaranteed flows effect does the following thing also. These flows are nicely shielded from each other. And that means that we are able, step by step, to use the full bandwidth of a line. Maybe you will be surprised, but if you take normal networking today, a 1 gig link or a 10 gig link, then you only use 20% of that link, a 1 gig, 200 megabits per second. That means, because of different things, but that means the fact that you are never able to use the full bandwidth of a link. In our case, because of what we do with our SDNsquare technology, you really go to 100% bandwidth efficiency. You get 4 to 5 times much more out of your existing network. Now, I'm going to skip this one and I'm going to skip this one. But in fact, what we also come up with is, and I'm going to focus here on the grid product and not on the storage product, is this kind of business model which can change with this solution. Hardware switches are in fact quite dumb material. It's just a chip and nice software around it. But what we bring in the market, and we don't want to make money with this hardware material itself, in fact we bring a software model in the market. Our expert system is running on a different server. And what we sell to the end user, what our revenue model is in fact to give a base license. People buy our material, or they buy the material from a third party, they buy our software, and that's a base license they have to pay for. And with that base license, you have, let's say, an available capacity, an available networking capacity over your network, a numbers of flows you can serve, and numbers of clients you can manage. And that means our solution can fit very well, very small in organizations, maybe post-production houses or small operation centers, or very large organizations. And just on the basis of simple software, we can just nicely bring them up and give them more capacity. And they just have to pay or put in a code to bring more clients and to bring more flows on the network. And if it really is too much, then of course they have to install extra hardware equipment. But you have, let's say, a range of what you can do business-wise already on a very simple software on-demand basis in that environment. So that's in fact how we bring the product into the market today and want to play with different sizes of companies. Now, as a company itself, our focus today and the size of the company we are is product sales. So we do direct sales of our solution in the European market. And we also bring this into a technology license, and of course our hope is also to OEM this to other product licenses. Now, our approach and our lessons learned in this exercise is the following. What I would like to share with you is the following. We have a strong founders team with a lot of experience. We are not young people, we are middle-aged people. We all have done a quite job before, even somebody who had another company, somebody who was quite deep in research, and myself. We could use the platform of Wim and iMinds to have good collaboration with the industry to work together. And I think this is a little bit the storyline of our company. And there is more detail in the slides, but I want to focus on 4 points here. First of all, we have taken our time. And that's probably very European because we are risk averse. But we have used as much as possible time before launching the company to build out our network, to work with companies like Cisco, IBM, Alcatel-Lucent, to do certain projects so that people know who we are, that people know what we do, and that we could try out what we have. And at the moment our product was really, our first product was finalized, then we have launched, let's say, then we have founded the company. And that was somewhere around 2010, mid-2010. Then directly, as a first principle, I said, we're going to do sales, we have to do sales, but we're not going to do sales in Belgium. Belgium is too small, Flanders is too small. We're going to do sales in Europe where the market is hot. And the market is hot in London. So we started sales in London. And we have quickly built up 20 references in the UK market. And now, since quarter last year, we got an investment from a European VC called Merapar, a new created fund. And what I want to say about the VC itself is that we have chosen we are happy with this VC, we have chosen for this VC because I see this VC much more than just purely financial investor. I really see this VC as a partner. This VC for us has more than purely financial resources. They come out of our industry and they know other industries, which is important. They have a network in that industry. And also they can fall back on their experience as ex-business people about bringing good people on board, good salespeople, good marketing people. So it helps a lot in forming the company. That VC is really a partner that helps us in bringing new salespeople on board, new marketing people on board. And I think that was really important. It's a really conservative way of building a company. Try it out before, do it in fact, some people would do it in the garage. We do it in the part-time we had in the company to build it up, move on, then do sales, build up references, and when we have the references, go to the next phase of the other product, and in fact, move on and build up that company with sales. Our strategy today is sales, sales, sales in Europe. That's the focus we have in the coming months. Relation to the United States, I think Wim is right. It's very difficult to build big companies in Belgium or in Europe. I think it maybe would be very good for us that maybe some people of our company move to the United States, and that was one of the intentions of my visit here, to pass by and to talk with certain people about opportunities in that area. Burton, I don't know if I can do one last slide about...
You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. I thought I had to speed up. So this is, let's say, a replication of what I have said. Now, is this the right thing to do and is it the right time to do? This is only about personal element in this whole discussion. How did I make this decision? First of all, there is an element which is going back to the history. If we know all our history well, people from Europe went to the United States in the past. Even part of my family came to the United States and they went back to Europe. In fact, part of the family fortune I have or is coming from is based on what happened in the past also 100 years ago. It's because we had such a luxury situation the last 30 years that nobody had the mindset anymore to think about working somewhere else. Even I went from Belgium to Switzerland, and my family said, "You're going to work in Switzerland? Oh, that's far away." So people don't think like that in Europe. But I think this is going back. Second thing, when you have a good career in Belgium, that means you have a good diploma. You went to Stanford or you went to the University of Gent, and then in fact your job was done. That's how we taught in Belgium. That's how we think in Belgium. When you have a good diploma, your job is done. You go for a safe job, you build up career. And in fact, I was on a career path like that. But I think right up there, I think these things are now changing with the situation, the economic situation. I think the mindset of people is changing in that area. So I was there. That was my last 6 years. Beautiful view on the Mont Blanc. Go skiing every weekend, no problem. But I dared to think and to change. Because bottom line, I had to go out of my comfort zone. And also I believed I want to do something, and I felt responsible to give something back. I know I had a network build up. I have a huge network of contacts in the media industry. I have a good understanding of technology, and I know I was able to do something more than other people. In fact, I felt myself responsible to do this, and with the person I am and the network I have, in fact, to make this possible. A lot of other people will be in much more difficult situations than I am and my colleagues to build this company. We have some elements that can make it a little bit easier, it looks like, meaning elements we can leverage on. And these are elements I want to take into account. But if you're really extremely conservative, then you can do the following calculation. You can sit in your chair and you say, if I stay in this job for the coming 20, 30 years, how much money am I going to earn? If I create this company and something positive happens, what can happen then? Just do the opportunity cost calculation, and I think then the calculation is quickly made. And if you fail, if you really are good and you leveraged on your career, you had a good professional network, you have built out your brand and credibility in the market, if you really fail, I'm sure I still get telephone calls, you always will find a job back. Thank you very much. Yeah, questions?
Yes. So, Lieven, we don't have many family-owned companies here at Stanford or in Silicon Valley, and we don't have many entrepreneurs actually here who are coming out of family entrepreneurship environment. What are the pressures you face, coming out of a family with family-owned companies? What are the pressures you faced vis-a-vis doing a startup, a highly scalable startup? Family pressures from your parents, other members of the family. Was there a lot of resistance or concern?
No, completely not, because
okay.
I think my family, this is now a really personal question, I think the real brave people were the people 100 years ago. And then everything what happened, let's say 1 and 2 generations back, was just building up further on that. And I hope my parents are not listening now, but in fact my parents already took less risks than the people 100 years ago. And I reflected on this, and it's even not risk in my situation, I must say. It's risk, but it's different. And I think it's not pressure, just I really believe I have to do this, and I feel it's part of my genes to do it. I just do it.
Okay. Questions? Yes, ma'am.
When I look at your timeline, and it actually takes 5 years for you to build up, in the industry. That sounds like market research, right? You do the market, you figure out your market, you figure out who's going to buy your product. During that period, actually, in Silicon Valley, it's actually, when I say this, I was like, wow, it takes 6 years, right? You go back again.
No, it's even longer, I can tell you. The original ideas are there from 2005-06. It's our case. It's how it, and I'm also not slow, in fact. But it's the way we do things in Europe. It took so much time. I'm not going to say it took so much time because of the systems. It's just. But one thing I can also mention is I also go sometimes to LA because I know the media industry quite well. I think it's just a completely different approach. When I go to Sweden on Thursday, or I was in Norway last week. And these are quite, let's say, positive attitude countries. I think less risk averse. You come with your product, and they already are open to it. There are a lot of other countries in Europe where people, in fact, like people are risk averse in doing a startup company. A lot of people in companies are risk averse to try out a new product, even if it's for free. I can mention 2 companies here in Hollywood, and they say, if you can do this, I'm happy to work with you. Just bring it in and let's play with it. And that's a fundamental, I think, also cultural different element which I feel here in the US, which we don't have, at least not everywhere in Europe.
Yeah, I'm also wondering, when you try that out, you have a full-time job, right?
No, now I have a full-time job, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, this whole process helps you reduce certain risk.
Yeah, but I think that's all part of the risk-averse culture in Europe.
One more quick question. Yes.
At what point did you decide to take venture capital and why?
Because we need it. we took the decision, in fact, in September handshake. It went. Wim knows this also very well. It went in 2 rounds. We were first talking with one party, and then it changed, and then, in fact, we did not find it in Belgium. We did not find it under the conditions we would like to have in Belgium, so we went for something which is called Merapar, which is more Netherlands, UK oriented, and that, in fact, the decision of that, the negotiations only took 2 months, I think, finally, so it went very fast. And why do we need it? It's to grow sales. So to bring references in the market to grow sales, and that's, in fact, our first priority now. That's to have, we have 2 products, Warp and Grid. The Grid, we have more than 20 references, especially in the UK market. Now we want to do the same with the Grid, and then to go to that next point to grow further again. Focus is on sales today.
Lieven, thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're now moving from Flanders, from Belgium, to the Nordic region. As I was mentioning to Martin earlier today when we met, he is the 3rd speaker this year out of the Nordic region, Estonia. We've also had Mikkel Svane from Zendesk, Denmark. And Martin is out of Creandum, Stockholm, but also strong ties into Norway. So Martin, thank you for joining us here today. Tell us what's happening at Creandum and the broad venture capital scene in the Nordic region.
Thank you. Is this one on? Thank you, Burton. It's an honor to be here, and it's a great pleasure. I have such good memories from this school. I spent a summer here a few years ago, joining a program at the Graduate School of Business here at Stanford. And this program was managed by a guy from Flanders called Robert Bergelman. And so I live in Stockholm. Stockholm is the capital city of Sweden. Sweden is a big country in Europe. But honestly, I am a Norwegian. And if you don't know it, Norway was the nation that got the 2nd most medals at the Winter Olympics in Russia. And as I tell my friends in Sweden, we congratulate them with a very strong number 14. So just to give you a flavor of how north this is, and people don't very often know it, but Stockholm is about on the same latitude as Anchorage in Alaska. So first, a few words about myself. My name is Martin Hauge. I think I can call myself a true Scandinavian entrepreneur. I have started companies in Norway, in Sweden, and in Denmark. Some of them good, some of them not so good. I have even filed for bankruptcy. But I have learned a lot through these years, and I have also learned that being an entrepreneur also means that you don't know when to give up. You just continue looking for a solution. I have had the pleasure of staying awake at night because I didn't have the money necessary for paying next month's salary, but I had to fix it. In Creandum, I'm spending today a lot of time supporting these 4 great companies. Up here TV, a Norwegian company, which is a restart of a company called Tandberg Television, which was sold to Ericsson a few years ago. And Vivino, the largest wine app in the world. And Autobutler, a game changer in the automotive aftermarket industry. And last but not least, a very early stage company called FitBay, which is a social network for discovering clothes that fit you and have the right and has the right size. I've also managed some exits out of Creandum that you can see here. And before Creandum, I founded a company called Creuna together with a friend of mine. It all started in my kitchen in Copenhagen, where I lived at that time. And today Creuna is the largest digital agency in the Nordics, about 500 employees, doing very well. And perhaps I shouldn't have sold my shares in 2004, just after I joined Creandum. I should have held on to them. I also have more than 15 years of experience as a CEO of different companies, most of them early stage startup companies. I will tell you a little bit now about the market in the Nordics and the opportunities that are in that market. I will then move on to tell you a little bit about our venture capital firm called Creandum and give you a flavor about how we work. And I will also, in the end, say a few words about the Nordic ecosystem. In Creandum, we are maintaining an exit database. And from these data, we know that Nordic companies represents about 7 to 8% in number of all global billion-dollar exits. If we, however, look at the exit value, the M&A exit value, the Nordics in the period of 06 to 08 represented 18% when it came to value, but only 5% in numbers of active VCs are active in this region compared to the US. And if we look at capital under management, we have about 1 to 2% of what they have in the US. In other words, in the Nordics, we are doing quite well. If we look below that, we have logged 42 exits that are over 100 million euros over this 10-year period. And you can also see that the average exit value is close to €500 million. There are some outliers in this picture, so the median exit value is about $250,000. We can also see that the annual exit value is increasing. This table here covers up to 2010, but we know now, we are in 2014, that this continues to grow. There are more and more exit value coming out of this market. Another interesting thing is also to see that the 2080 rule applies also here. It's 17% of the M&A transactions and IPOs that represent 82% of the total exit value. This is the Nordics today. It's we have identified 10 companies in the Nordics which have a valuation above $1 billion. And we see now that about one such company is started every year. And please be aware that this doesn't include the large Norwegian oil and gas sector. It does not also include the Nordic medtech sector. So, a little bit about Creandum and the model. Creandum was founded in 2003 in Stockholm. I was actually not there when it was founded. I came in after the pregnancy of 9 months, and have been a general partner with Creandum since then. Sweden in the Nordics, and the Nordics consist of Finland, Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland. Sweden represents about 2/3 of the market for tech companies in the Nordics. And Stockholm, the Stockholm region, represents about 2/3 of Sweden. And Creandum is the only true VC venture capital firm that are headquartered in Stockholm. In Creandum, we have slightly above 250 million euros under management. And last year, we closed our last fund. We raised 135 million euros, which we are now investing from. We are an early stage investor, and we focus on seed and A rounds. And actually, we see now that we have a large number of companies that are active here on the US market, and that's why we have decided to have one general partner. We have 4 general partners all together. One of the general partners, he is located here in Silicon Valley. It's not me. So I'm going to tell you about the secret sauce. And in Creandum, we have 3 principles for our investments and the building of our third fund, which we expect to be around 30 companies. We want it to be diversified, both when it comes to sector. We invest in three different sectors. We invest in what we call internet consumer cases. We invest in software companies, and we invest in hardware companies. Not so much hardware, most software, and maybe internet consumer. And we want to invest in the seed phase, in the early phase, and what we call late A rounds. We are looking for companies with a huge potential. Because we are taking a huge risk when we do the investments early stage, we also want to see the potential for getting a lot of money back. We want to see at least a 10x potential in our investment. We call that venture returns or home run potential. And we want to get in early. We prefer to be the first institutional investor. And this is some of our investments during the history of Creandum. You might recognize some of the names here. And I do really hope that in a few years you will recognize a lot more of them. But we are very proud of this portfolio. And this is the investment team in Creandum. 9 great guys hoping very strongly that our next hire will be a female. And as a team and as individuals, we have founded ourselves about 20, or slightly more actually than 20 tech companies. we have done 5 IPOs, and we have done more than 10 M&A exits, of which 4 of them are north of 100 million euros. So let me round this off by saying a few words about the Nordic ecosystem. We have dinosaurs, a lot of them, in the Nordics. And I guess you know several of these brands. And yeah, they are there. But these companies, that's the future. This is where, this is the new companies, the new value that is created, and new jobs. And this is the $1 billion slide again. And we have, as you have in Flanders and as you have everywhere, we have an ecosystem, and an ecosystem with a lot of players, different players. We call them trolls, where I come from, and they have multiple heads. And they challenge us. They bring us a lot of challenges. One of the big challenges is that in the Nordics, we have the honor of having the globally highest income tax in the world.
Together with Belgium.
We are fighting every day with this, and we have a number of issues. But one of the things that we are fighting very strongly for now is to get the possibility of issuing stock options. We envy the US that you have this possibility, because it's so important for us who are trying to build a new generation of great companies. We have LPs, limited partners, investors in our fund, but it's very few. And even fewer of them have interest in investing in something called early stage technology. And we have enterprises. And these enterprises that I showed you, unfortunately, they have very little interest in contributing into our ecosystem. But still, you should also know that we in the Nordics, we are actually the happiest people on earth. And we do create great companies, really great companies. If you want to stay in touch, you can follow me on Twitter, or you can follow Creandum on Twitter. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation.
So, Martin, I thought it was the Danes who were the happiest people.
Yeah, but
Is that?
we are competing. Danes, Norwegians.
Okay. So
Norwegians are the richest one.
But if the Danes are really happy, they're happy to share that, I'm sure. What are the specific issues around the stock options problem in Nordic Europe?
Well, it's the way it's taxed. It's if you want to give stock options to an employee, the tax system doesn't really allow it to be something that's of value to the employee. You can give it, but the tax authorities, they will tax it so much that it has close to zero value.
So giving stock options to employees is actually imposing a tax penalty on them with no financial benefit at all, because these are paper valuations. This is before the company is exited, before the shares are worth anything.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay, that would be a big problem in building a stock options culture. Questions? Yes.
You were saying that you're mainly investing in software and consumer companies. So who's investing actually, and you're one of the only VCs in the Nordic region, so who's investing in hardware, medtech, biotech, or is there no investor?
There are other investors in the Nordics. Smaller investors that partially are connected to the governmental funding. There are investors that are specialized in medtech, who do investments there, who don't invest in the tech sector, so we don't see them. Some of the Europe's most successful investors are investing in the oil and gas industry in Norway. So yes, there is a variety of different investors that maintain the different sectors.
But would you agree that there's a major gap around medtech, hardware-related funding projects in Nordic Europe?
I wouldn't say that.
No?
Okay. No. And we tend to say that the good companies, they get funding. It's not really an issue. But what we see is that there are few investors that have the origin in the Nordics. So what we see is investors coming out of UK, US investors. We see Sand Hill Road investors investing in Stockholm and competing with us. But yes, there are capital available for good startups.
Yes, in the back.
I used to work for one of your dinosaur companies, Sandvik. And one thing that I noticed is that their board and all of their top managers were Swedish, old Swedish men. And so one of the things that they struggled with was expanding globally and understanding the cultures of the bigger economies, such as the US and China, and how to do business there. So one thing I'm curious about is how your company, with the investors being, no offense, but a little bit similar to the board of Sandvik, how you're looking at a global perspective of your investments and how you see them expanding into an international market.
Our investors are not Sandvik-like investors. Because they should do. They should invest in funds like ours. They should invest into the ecosystem, but they don't, unfortunately. Sandvik, for those who doesn't know it, it's a tool company. It's making hammers and traditional tools. Located a little north of Stockholm in a place called Sandviken. If you work. It has changed a little bit, but traditionally, if you worked there, you had to live there. So it's a very special culture. But unfortunately, these dinosaurs, they don't do it, and that is one of the challenges that we have in the Nordics.
One more question, then we're going to bring up Wim and Lieven. Constanza?
What makes Sweden so special? Why the companies that you are building there are huge, big, global-minded? Instead of the rest of Europe, you don't hear so much noise and big corporations coming from other countries. Why is it so special?
It's a very good question. I'm happy you raised that question because I'm very happy to answer it. The reason for the Nordics being successful building billion-dollar companies is that our markets are very small. If you want to build something, you have to move out of your own comfort zone and you have to go international. Because remember, Norway and Denmark is about 5-6 million people each. Sweden is 10 million. Finland is about 5. The market is too small to build something. So as soon as you do something, you have to go out. And if you move internationally, you are suddenly everywhere. So I think that's the main reason. We are very international, and in the Nordics we have our own funny language, but everyone speaks English. A lot speak German or French or yeah.
Wim and Lieven, could we ask you to come up? And Wim, can I position you closer to that mic? Martin, could you come a little bit this way? Because Wim's not wearing a mic. And Lieven, Recalling Lieven's Twitter map of Europe, do you know when that data was generated? It was
If you
2000.
Google, 2008, I think, or 2006, I don't know.
So it was in early days of Twitter.
No, it's no, it must be later. I don't know exactly the date, to be honest.
So I don't recall seeing many connections between Belgium and Nordic Europe.
It was based on
that-
language. Yeah. It was based on language. Yeah. So it doesn't
Okay.
map the English language, of course, but I think it just gives an idea about how many communication works in Europe, and I think it's correct.
Okay. You had a question.
I had a question about, in terms of valuation, you're talking about the differences with the stock options. So let's look at the valuations from the investor perspective. For example, you're referring to somebody that just invested in Truecaller, putting $20 million in a company that you haven't heard that much about in Sweden. Do you think that, are you afraid of, as Nordic-based investors, that the US investors will realize that the valuations are actually still very attractive over the Northern region and will, and so forth, step on your toes?
But I think this question can also be applied to Belgium as well.
Could you repeat
So-
the question, please?
Repeat the question.
Rephrase it for me.
So the question is, are the evaluations appropriate in Sweden and Belgium?
You go first.
Okay. Yes, we do have issues with competition from abroad. We do create great companies, and this is spotted all the way from Sand Hill Road to London, and we do see them. And is this a problem? No, it's not. Sometimes they take an investment that we would like to do, but for the ecosystem as a whole, we consider this being good. We welcome them, and we want to see more of it.
Yeah, I think in general, valuations might be getting on the high side here in Silicon Valley right now, but that's another debate. But in Europe, valuations have typically been low. And in my opinion, in many cases too low because of the market. Valuation is a function of the market in a lot of cases, and then local VCs valued companies too low, put too little money in essentially, and then did not create the growth potential, or that did not enable the companies to grow internationally as quickly as they should. So basically, I'm actually in favor of relative, at least, I'm not sure what the Nordic situation is because you have a lot more success stories, but in our case, I try to create an environment where those companies get valued properly so that the entrepreneurs can win and that they get enough money to grow internationally. So I don't think we have a problem yet, to be honest, that US VCs come in and drive up the valuations. Certainly not in our region. There's still a lack of venture capital, and I hope US VCs who have been typically not so keen on moving into European companies will do it more in the future.
We have time for one more question. Yes.
I have a question specifically for labor. So a lot of the talent in the U.S. market, there's a lot of open positions, but not enough talent. Is that the same thing that you're doing, that you're having issues with talent to fill specific roles?
Yeah, there's a global shortage of technology talent, both technically and specifically in Europe. In our particular case, I think people with global sales and marketing and business development skill sets are even more rare to find. And again, the ecosystem of professionals who've started companies and then can move to new startups is strengthen those teams. That's a bottleneck everywhere right now, given the evolution of our industry. And the only way to solve it is is education, basically, and culture. It's a combination of both. But I don't think it'll go away quickly. It'll get even more pressing.
So Martin, and then we'll wrap up with Lieven.
I will just give a comment to that because we have moved some of our companies to the US. But what we do is that we continue to do engineering and the tech and development in Europe because the cost of engineering in Europe and in the Nordics are considerably lower, at least compared to Silicon Valley. So what we do is we do marketing and sales here, and we do tech development in Europe.
That's true for a number of Belgian companies.
And Lieven, what landscape are you seeing for talent in Flanders and Belgium?
I think talent is not a problem, I think. Okay, there's shortage maybe IT-wise and so on, but I think it's the right attitude and the international profiles. So around the sales people we are attracting, so I just said from the beginning, I'm not going to attract the Belgian sales guy. We have now somebody from Germany on board, we have somebody from the Netherlands on board, somebody from the UK on board. Because everybody has this typically attitude to look to the local market. So we just wanted to have somebody which was not from Belgium, first of all. And secondly, also people with an international approach. Or they have done something internationally before, or they just have the right attitude to look around and be around. And I think that's one of the biggest problems or hurdles we still have, that self-local focus we have.
Lieven, I'd like to thank you for coming all the way from Gent.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you. Martin, a small thank you from Stanford.
Thank you very
coming all the way from Stockholm. And Wim, our Belgian Flemish partner, thank you very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you very much. Next Monday, our final session, Poland and Hungary. Please don't miss it. Ustream and UX PIN. Thank you.